Hello and welcome to India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. This is a show that gets you all the big stories that matter to the global Indian. First up, as always, we start with the headlines. Chief of Defence Staff flags new threat to India. That could be the China-Pakistan-Bangladesh nexus. This comes even as Turkey's defence ministers land in Pakistan for talks with Shahbaz Sharif. Prime Minister Modi's Global South diplomacy's final stop is Namibia, where critical minerals, diamonds and strategic ties are in focus. US student visa issuance for Indian students is at its lowest since the COVID pandemic. Student visa issuance has crashed by 27% due to a crackdown by Trump administration. India and US are all set to finalize a mini trade deal ahead of the 9th of July deadline, even as a mega trade deal is some time away due to discussions that are still yet to close on agriculture. And Apple appoints Sabeh Khan as its chief operating officer. From Muradabad to Apple, we decode the journey of Sabeh Khan. Viewers, our top story on India Global today. Chief of Defence Staff General Chauhan has warned of a possible strategic convergence between China, Pakistan and Bangladesh, a development that he said will carry serious long-term implications for India's security and regional stability. He flagged the shifting geopolitical order and called for a sharper assessment of the evolving alignments across South Asia, and it could be a whole host of reasons. He said it could be the increasing Chinese presence in India's neighbourhood. He warned that growing China, Pakistan, Bangladesh axis would test our security architecture. Now, fast forward 12 hours and you have Turkey's defence minister in Pakistan for talks with the Prime Minister. What are we looking at? We are looking at the three countries in the arc that the CDS highlighted: China, Pakistan and Bangladesh. But there's also Turkey, all of which together pose a serious and concerted challenge as far as India is concerned. What would that be is something that we are going to decode. But first, I want to play out this soundbite of Chief of Defence Staff, and then we go forward.
Distress in countries in the IOR has given outside powers to leverage their influence through debt diplomacy, creating vulnerabilities for India. Similarly, frequent shifts in government in South Asia with changing geopolitical equation and ideological views, another major challenge that we face. Similarly, there is a possible convergence of interest we can talk about between China, Pakistan and Bangladesh, may have security implications for regional stability and security dynamics.
All right, viewers, as always, we first put up the big questions and then we get in General Satish Dua for more on this. First and foremost, is Pakistan looking to amplify its defense after Operation Sindoor? They relied on the Turkish drones. Are they going to rely on that again after Operation Sindoor's debacle? Second key question, how big a threat is this entire nexus really for India? Something that the CDS highlighted. The third key question that we're putting up is that what are India's options with regard to this nexus? Next and final equally important question is that what about Turkey? How big a threat is that for India's interests? And Turkey plus Pakistan, what does that add up to? And the last question we have, and then we get in General Dua, is on the fact that what about the larger interests that all of this collectively put forward? All right, General Dua, thanks much for speaking to us on NDTV. Let me start by asking you, sir, there are these two parallel things. The three countries that the CDS highlighted, but also at the same time, you have the Turkish defense minister on Pakistani soil. So we need to be adding that as well. And are we looking at a potential four-nation anti-India nexus to deal with?
Well, if you take your mind back to Operation Sindoor, during Operation Sindoor, the countries that were overtly ranged against us, in addition to Pakistan, were China, Turkey, and Azerbaijan. And so this nexus or these countries are opposed to India. That is a given. But and Bangladesh actually remained, though it remained neutral during that time, But over the last 1 year, since August last year, when Sheikh Hasina left the country, and she's in India, since then, the relationship between India and Bangladesh have been a little tenuous. On the other hand, the influence of Pakistan, and notably of Pakistan ISI, in matters of Bangladesh is increasing. Now, that is something that we need to worry about and we need to watch with concern. Right. So, to answer your question, is this a nexus that's emerging? The point is, yes, certainly. China has already got inroads into Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is more than willing. I mean, you know the visit of Mohammed Yunus to China and the fallouts of that. And so China is strongly in bed with
Yes.
Bangladesh. It is using it. Pakistan, China and Pakistan are higher than mountains and deeper than the oceans kind of
Right.
friendship, and that is why we need to worry more about this sort of nexus that is emerging.
Then let me ask you this, sir, that Turkey and Pakistan also have deep defense
Yes.
engagement, defense ties as well, and defense purchases. Do you see that to get a fresh leg up after Op Sindoor and the kind of lack of preparations, lack of preparedness on the Pakistani side? Do you think that is going to get a fresh leg up here? And should India then be prepared for more Turkish weaponry on the Pakistani side?
To my mind, the kind of drubbing Pakistan got in Operation Sindoor, Pakistan has realized that they need to enhance their defensive preparedness. And to do that, I think they would be willing to get weapons and platforms from anywhere.
All right. And
But
finally, right. Yes,
unlikely
sir.
to, US is unlikely to give it to them. So Turkey seems to be their best bet in addition to China. And that is why they are enhancing this relationship with Turkey to another level.
Okay, then which brings me to ask you the larger question in terms of China. How do you see the Chinese presence with regard to the Indian neighborhood? Something that the CDS highlighted. He also pointed out that because of economic instability, the flux that these countries are facing, the Indian Ocean again is another challenge. But how do you see the Chinese role and how do you see India countering that with several of these countries coming at the behest of China and Chinese money?
Well, China continues to throw rings around India. That will not stop. China and India are competitors in this space, not only in the military domain but also in the economic domain, as was just mentioned, including the Indian Ocean region. So we are likely to see our adversarial or a competitive relationship with China in every domain in times to come. And for doing this, to carry their purpose forward, they are obviously likely to use all the neighboring countries around India to the best of their ability. And we have to my mind, I think what India can do is we need to continue our engagement. For
Okay.
example, our engagement with Bangladesh, engagement with Myanmar, and other neighboring countries as well must continue.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there. Lt Dua, thanks much for speaking to me on NDTV as far as this is concerned. And viewers, let's quickly now talk about what does this add up to in terms of the bottom line. And we've got the map for you to understand what is the challenge here and is there a larger anti-India nexus? Let's put that out one by one, the countries that are there and how they add up. That's Pakistan, then there is China, then there is Bangladesh there, and there is Turkey. So Pakistan, China, Turkey, Bangladesh together is that nexus that is right there. And India needs to have a concerted and a clear reply in terms of what's our long-term vision to be able to address this potential anti-India nexus. It's tied together by Chinese money, Chinese interests, but one also needs to look at the other side. Was it Indian Army Deputy Chief's very clear statement that the Chinese and the Turkish interests aligned with Pakistan during Operation Sindoor, which they vehemently denied, but 24 hours later is when you have the Turkish defense minister on Pakistani soil. On Operation Sindoor, Pakistan also got a huge drubbing. Now, what does this all nexus add up to? It adds up to more Chinese weaponry, it adds up to more Turkish drones. But collectively, is it enough? Well, if Operation Sindoor showed anything, it was that it's a trailer for the kind of weaponry, the kind of talent and the kind of ammunition that India has, and even all of them put together are unlikely to have any impact. All right, viewers, let's now move ahead and talk about the other important story, which is Prime Minister Modi in Brazil. There were some very key announcements that were finalized. This was the fourth stop of the Prime Minister. This was also a bilateral engagement where Prime Minister Modi was met the Brazilian president, and there were key engagements and key MOUs that were signed, including from the financial, tech, trade aspects to, of course, greater push as far as global south and diplomacy is concerned. Let's play out that soundbite of Prime Minister Modi, then we move forward on India Global.
आज राष्ट्रपति जी द्वारा मुझे ब्राजील के सर्वोच्च राष्ट्रीय सम्मान से विभूषित किया जाना मेरे लिए ही नहीं बल्कि 140 करोड़ भारतवासियों के लिए भी अत्यंत गर्व और भावुकता का पल है। मेरे मित्र राष्ट्रपति लूला भारत और ब्राजील स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के चीफ आर्किटेक्ट हैं। हमने आने वाले 5 वर्षों में द्विपक्षीय व्यापार को $20 बिलियन तक ले जाने का लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया है।
All right, now his 2-day visit to Brazil has concluded. Prime Minister Modi is now in Namibia. This is his first visit to the country. The first visit to the southern African country also marks the last stop of his 5-nation tour. This state visit is the third ever to be taken by an Indian Prime Minister. On your screens are those visuals of his grand welcome. It comes at the invitation of the recently elected president. And Prime Minister Modi will hold bilateral talks while he is in Namibia. He'll deliver an address at the Namibian Parliament, and just like his prior address at Ghana as well. And we're going to try and get you an important voice, Ambassador Shanika, who is the Deputy Executive Director, Ministry of International Relations and Trade, joining us from Namibia. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to us. Now, this is an important visit of Prime Minister Modi. In your assessment, what would be your expectations out of this historic visit?
Thank you very much, and I must thank you for having me, and of course extend the goodwill to all those listening. It is a very important visit. As you know, Namibia and India have relations that are deep-rooted in history. These relations date back to the days of the Namibians' liberation struggle, when India stood behind the liberation movement, SWAPO, and at one point accorded it a diplomatic status almost at the level of a state actor. So, and by supporting us until we achieve independence, it's something that's worth celebration and as well as worth strengthening. And beside the historic, there are also economic relations that of course need further strengthening. And of course, both India and Namibia, they are members of the United Nations.
Yes.
They are members of the Commonwealth, and there are various avenues of cooperation that the two countries can engage on.
Indeed. Which brings me to ask you, sir, that there are both diplomatic aspects to this and there are also trade aspects to it. Specifically with regard to trade, there is critical minerals, diamonds, those are likely to be the key priorities. How important do you think the trade relationship between India and Namibia is going to be going forward, especially since critical minerals are now a major priority for India?
I think trade relation plays a key role in any country's relations. And of course, I cannot preempt what the Prime Minister and the President are going to discuss, but I can assure you, once they have discussed, there will be an outcome of it, which will then tell us what exactly they have discussed, but it's just to highlight the point that the trade relations, you have mentioned critical material, raw material, especially when it talks to renewable energy. These are key issues to be discussed, and they can strengthen the relation or economic relation between one country and another.
Sir, ahead of the Prime Minister's address to the Namibian Parliament, what is it that you are looking forward to from this address?
I think we are looking to what the Prime Minister would tell the Namibia nations, particularly the lawmakers, how India will like to strengthen its relation with Namibia, and what India has to offer. As you know, Namibia has attained independence 35 years ago, because of the India support. What will the Prime Minister will have to offer, where perhaps Namibia needs some a kind of assistance that the Prime Minister of India, as a nation that have a long history, in what way they can help Namibia to capacitate its institutional development, and any other area that we might cooperate, because it's not just a matter of capacitation, but it's also a matter how we can cooperate, whether it is in the political field, whether it's in the economical field, whether it's in the cultural field, people-to-people relations. Those are some of the areas that we want to see how we can cooperate with the countries, nations of India.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Ambassador Shanika, thanks much for speaking to us and joining from Namibia on the expectations in terms of what's likely to happen. Line of credit could get a fresh boost, and so could be collaboration in technology and trade. Viewers, on that note, a quick break on India Global. We come back on the other side, talk more about student visas from India to the US. Why are they shrinking and what lies ahead? We're going to decode that in greater detail. Stay with us on NDTV on India Global. Now, viewers, March to July is a time period that is generally a very busy visa season ahead of the commencement of a new term, which is the fall semester. But the issuance rate of US student visas for Indians have hit a record low. It's in fact the lowest dip for the months from March to May since the pandemic. As per the latest data that's come in from the American State Department, the numbers have crashed to 27% in comparison to where they stood last year. And let's get you those numbers in greater detail, viewers, to be able to better understand just how significant that impact has been as far as students are concerned. Let's first put up the numbers. You can see that for 2021, that was the COVID year. 2022 was the first year when international travel has sort of just picked up. It was 10,000. 2023 was about a little under 15,000, which has been the highest in the last 5 years. It dipped to 13.5, and now it's come to sub 10,000 levels. It's actually the lowest in the last 4 years. So you take away the COVID year, which is 2021, see the kind of dip that has come in as far as visas are concerned. Now, why is that is something that needs to be now talked about in greater detail. And let's put that out as well as to why is it there are lesser and lesser number of F1 visas. F1 is the category in which visas have to be granted when you go out for studying in like a proper course. J and M are separate categories, but F is when you go for a proper degree course. Now, why is it that this has happened? The crackdown of Donald Trump's administration on visas continues. First and foremost, thousands of student visas had actually been revoked. And why had that happened? There were actually very flimsy grounds on which this had happened. Minor infractions, traffic violations, all that were cited as reasons for the visa to be revoked. And in addition to that, what had happened was the latest that has come in is that social media accounts are now being vetted. Now, all students who wish to apply for a visa have been told by the US State Department that they've got to make their settings public. Now they're going to start mining all social media accounts of everybody who's going to apply. Then that could of course mean more delay and more reasons and flimsy grounds for rejection. Let's move ahead and talk about what is the kind of university treatment that has happened as far as Donald Trump's tenure so far has concerned. This is the kind of funding freeze that has happened for all the major universities. A lot of time has been spent on explaining how much Harvard has been at the receiving end of Donald Trump's regime, but there are others as well. Cornell, Northwestern, Columbia, Princeton, all of these have seen their funds shrink. Now what happens when funds shrink? There are lesser number of international students who are given those scholarships. One reason why these numbers have lowered. And let's now talk about the other aspect of why the crackdown on students has actually been so intense. OPT. Now, OPT is the optional practical training, which is when you can study and at the same time opt for some sort of training mechanism. A lot of students, most of them opt for that, and that is likely to end. And OPT allows students to actually work in the US after graduation. And the program, if it gets scrapped, that will have a huge bearing as far as how students look at their future evaluation process in terms of what they do after the degree. Paving into the reason why visas may reduce, why lesser students may go. But this is in a nutshell explaining to you viewers why these numbers, which are sub 10,000, are so significant as far as issuance of visas is concerned. One last thing viewers that I want to say is last year Indian students surpassed the number of Chinese students in US. But if these are the kind of visas that are going to be issued, that number is set to change. Who stands to lose from that? Not just the students. They will evaluate alternative universities. It is the American economy that stands to lose when best talent starts going somewhere else. And that's something that Donald Trump's administration needs to keep in mind when it comes up with such mechanisms and such policies. All right, now turning attention to the other important story that's coming in. An Indian nurse is now facing execution in Yemen in just 7 days. And her desperate family in Kerala is pleading for last-minute help. Nimisha Priya is from Kerala. She was convicted of murdering a Yemenis man in 2018. She allegedly injected him with sedatives during a fight over her passport, but the dose proved fatal. And now her mother, who's a domestic worker, has sold her house to save her. The Indian government says it's doing all it can, working with the Yemenis officials and trying to negotiate a blood money settlement, a legal way to avoid execution. But talks broke down last year over legal fees. A Global Action Council raised money through crowdfunding, but time is now running out. Nimisha Priya is set to be executed on the 16th of July. Her family, the External Affairs Ministry of India and supporters are making a final push, hoping that it's not too late. Turning attention now to a very important story, that is Apple has named Sabi Khan as its new Chief Operating Officer, taking over from Jeff Williams. Yet another instance of Indian talent making it to the Wall Street and making it as one of the biggest talents in Silicon Valley. It's part of a long-planned succession. Khan has been with Apple for 30 years and is currently the Senior Vice President of Operations in the company. In his present role, Khan oversees the company's global supply chain, supplier responsibility programs and ops. And Apple CEO Tim Cook praised him, calling him a brilliant strategist and one of the central architects of Apple's supply chain. Tim Cook also applauded him for reducing Apple's carbon footprint by more than 60%, mentioning that he introduced technologies that improved Apple's manufacturing, expanding it in the US. He will now be taking over this role later this month. Yet another instance of Indian tech talent driving Silicon Valley. All right, well, as we wrap things up, beautiful, big and bizarre, anything but boring. Paris Couture Week, which celebrates the best of fashion design, has kicked off with Indian designer Rahul Mishra once again making jaw-dropping pieces. Rahul Mishra's latest collection explores the 7 stages of love that is inspired by Sufism. That's all the time we have on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for tuning in.